Thank you very much. Why don't we just bring the whole panel on stage and get started so we can get started. Please come on up. We have a great panel to discuss these issues today. We have Mei Yan, who's the Deputy Director of CGTN's digital arm, so she'll be the working journalist on the panel. We have Adrian Wells, who's the Managing Director of NX, which represents 75 commercial broadcasters, so a powerhouse in the media world. John Lee, Professor of Digital Media at University of Edinburgh. Benny Fu, International Business Manager of iFlyRec, who's an expert in artificial intelligence and in artificial speech. And we have Yan Peng, who's the General Manager of Tencent Cloud, so one of China's most exciting companies working in the cloud. Thank you all very much for joining us today. Journalists used to think their business was just about telling stories, but the past 2 decades have seen tremendous technological inroads into the industry to the point where tech media is not only a powerful combination, but a necessary one for survival. As organizations upgrade their people, as they upgrade their capabilities, as they upgrade their credibility, they also have to upgrade their technology, or else they'll be left behind. So from new ways of delivering the product to new ways of reporting and creating, technology really is the key. Man, I'd like to start with you as the working journalist on the panel. How has artificial intelligence begun to impinge on your world? How have you thought about using it? What are some of the creative ways you think you'll be moving your newsroom to use it more in the next few years?
I think technology right now is part of our life. We live and breathe with technology as common people. As for a news industry, I think AI right now, I think people are very skeptical about AI's usage, and also we're debating about whether AI will replace human intelligence. But I would say for all the traditional newsroom, like news professionals, we need to embrace new technology because like television is based on technology, internet based on technology. These changes will be inevitable. So we need to embrace and to experiment with those. And I think AI, I don't think it can replace human intelligence because still AI is created by human. It needs instant human intelligence input. However, I think AI can help tremendously on content analysis because based on algorithm, and it can help us to collect data to have better understanding of our users, have a better user profiles, and it will in turn guide our content production. But I know some newsroom, there are experimental with AI writing, which we haven't done yet because I still feel that's a sophisticated work. I still feel AI might be doing some very easy, simple, programmed like sports news when you have very clear rules. But in terms of creative journalist writing, I think it still have a long way to go, and I'm skeptical it will reach that stage, will be there. So I think AI can help in a way to assist and to provide more detailed analysis and guidance on our production, but it can't replace what journalists are doing. So maybe in the future, the newsroom will be part human, part machine, and we don't know. Looking forward to that.
So Adrian, maybe I'll go to you because I think I'm right in saying that you had 75 members. Of those 75, what's really the curve in terms of those which are advanced in using new technology and those are lagging behind, and what are some of the more exciting things that you see amongst your members?
I think in regards to artificial intelligence, the number of working applications right now in commercial TV newsrooms are really quite small, but that's probably just the beginning of the process. Where we do see it impinging, and there are many, I just went to the IBC Technology Fair in Amsterdam this year, and there were many, many more than before companies who are operating in that area where if you have your content in the cloud, you can access many tools either from the big players like Amazon or from more specialist companies who can provide a sort of service layer once your content is digitized. So I guess right now, what we see that there are companies operating in the space who can automatically tag your content. Facial recognition is really quite common now, so that you can access products where, if you're operating an archive service, for example, or even a TV newsroom, you can tell who's speaking and why. There are other products in the market where you can set the search parameters around speech. So if you're listening to Trump and the story of the day is Kushner, or maybe it's Jerusalem, you can preset these words, and an audio listening AI device will be able to clip up those relevant clips and spit them out for you. And also, we just had our own industry conference, my own organization, and one of the speakers there is a company that's actually specializing in automated data journalism, creation of data, creation of journalistic pieces based around data that's available in the UK, of crime statistics or health statistics. And what they've managed to do there is to create a template of a story and fill in the different numbers as they apply to different regions. And so they can create one template and 300 different versions of the same story. So that is the beginning of automated journalism, but still needs human oversight and human intervention. But it shows you that you can do a lot more without involving human beings necessarily as the main driver for that.
Thanks a lot. So Adrian mentioned the cloud, so maybe we should go to Yanpeng next and talk about what you see as the greatest applications of cloud technology for media, and how big do you think the media sector will be in terms of your business? Will it always just be a very small niche, or do you see media companies taking a bigger share of the cloud business at Tencent?
整个媒体呢，对于整个腾讯来说，不但
For Tencent,
整个腾讯来说都是非常
media companies are always important.
这个之前的这个消费的这个互联网，目前是
Before we
产业互联网。
were a consumer internet company. Now we are an industrial internet company. We pay a lot of attention to media brands, especially when it comes to AI and the Tencent Cloud. For artificial intelligence, we have accumulated 20 years of experience in AI because we have been doing social networking and internet business for 20 years. We have accumulated a lot of data. Now we would like to make use of the data. We would like to open the data. We are going to converge with the media companies. We are going to benefit media companies with our data.
Okay, that's interesting. So maybe Benny Fu, we can talk to you a little bit about the artificial voice and AI that you've been working with in your company. How do you see that helping media companies in the future?
科大讯飞呢是一直从事于人工智能和智能语音相关的
In artificial intelligence and natural language processing, we have been trying a lot of technologies, applying them to media application. For example, we have a cloud integration plus machine learning. We apply this technology on Auto Navy, and we can simulate the voice of celebrities. So when you are driving, the GPS will give you guidance, and it will be an actual human being talking to you, telling you where to drive, how to drive, and it can be a celebrity. And we also collaborated with CCTV documentary. We produced a documentary called Innovation China, and part of the documentary was dubbed by a celebrity, but it's not dubbed by the celebrity himself. It was actually created by artificial intelligence, by our technology. So I think by applying our technology in media world, we can reduce the workload of media friends and journalists. We also have a voice recognition. We know the data available to us is not structured. It's not structured. In order to make a better use of the voice resources, we have to structure the material, the data. We can convert voice file into text and the other way around. In this way, we can delete the part of the text and then convert it back to voice. So we do not have to edit the audio file anymore. We can simply edit the text file and convert it back to audio file. That's the work we have been doing.
Let's talk about
非常有意思。
innovation process. So maybe Don Lee, well, we can talk about that because one of the interesting things about technological innovation is that you have this triangle between the practitioners, the businesses serving the practitioners, and then academia doing the research. So what do you really see in this area of artificial intelligence and its applicability into the media space?
Yes, well, I think that as we've heard, there are clearly directions of automation, for example, coming into areas even like journalism. And I think what that depends on is data being used in ways which are clearly thought through and structured, as we were also hearing, such that the data is kind of prepared for this process of automation. And I think that what that means is that you tend to get a kind of convergence of things. People are preparing the material that they've got, they're treating it as data, they're marking it up, they're structuring it in various ways, but those ways tend to converge in order that it can be used by the same kinds of technology. And I think that's a risk from the point of view of innovation. What tends to happen in that kind of situation is that innovation can get squeezed out in certain respects. So I think that one way that we can work between practice and academia is by trying to develop more kind of refined ways of thinking about how that sort of circle works, how we can actually control the development of that circle so that we're taking into account the kinds of developments that are occurring when data is structured, and actually allowing that to be nuanced by the kinds of requirements that creative people need in order to develop new kinds of content and new kinds of techniques of manufacturing and working with content.
That's interesting. Of course, it's not just about the new forms, it's also about how it's actually received. And when I think about companies in this space, one of the ones that I find really interesting is the Chinese company ByteDance, which does Jin'er Toutiao, which uses artificial intelligence to personalize the news in a way that drives absolutely extraordinary engagement figures. What do you think about using artificial intelligence in that manner? Is it actually helpful to media companies? It certainly can make a lot of money, or does it become one of these self-referential processes where people keep on only seeing the things that the machine thinks that they will want, and then nothing new ever breaks into that circle? Man?
Right, I think that's my genuine concern as a practitioner, because if you base on data collection, you only push to people who, to the area or topics they're interested in. So that might lead to like audience fragmentation. So how are we supposed to amplify the diversity of the topics? Because as a journalist, I think it's also one of the responsibility to push forward for social advancement, to educate the public. I'm not trying to be saying that I'm on top of it, but the interactive process definitely will benefit us in terms of content production. However, the way it's trying to cater to individuals' interests, somehow for me, it's quite dangerous.
what do you think about that, maybe from Tencent's point of view? Where Tencent as a huge corporation, of course, is all about getting more and more audience and more engagement. How do you focus the technology to make sure that there are standards and that that it's not an unbalanced effect?
这个方面，我个人认为，这个腾讯在这方面
Personally, I believe
它在这个发展
well, every company has its own stage of development. Tencent was one of the first internet companies in China, and now it has become one of the world's top 10 internet companies, which means we have a strong sense of corporate social responsibilities. Technology-wise, I think we are ready to do a lot of things, but we have not put those technologies into application for short-term gains. That is mainly because we have that strong sense of corporate social responsibilities. We want to be responsible corporate citizens in the sense that we want to contribute to the creation of a sound media environment. Take, for instance, today everybody's talking about the convergence of media. And I'm not saying, I think instead of talking about just what a traditional media need to do to capture this opportunity, more need to be done to think about how to create value. And in this period of transition, how do media organizations in China find areas where they can create real value? True, now we at Tencent have developed the technologies. We are willing to open those technologies to mainstream media organizations. But mostly this is mainly to help them better understand how to create content that is truly valuable. This is what we're trying to do.
I don't think one of the things that's interesting.
那我觉得比较有意思的一点就是
foreign practitioners, Chinese practitioners, one of the things that CGTN and CCTV Plus try to do is have a Chinese point of view on stories. But when you look at the internet, you really have two different worlds of development, because there hasn't been an awful lot of crossover between companies like ByteDance, Toutiao, or Tencent, or the Googles, the Facebooks. They've developed in different ways because of different national characteristics. Which are the areas where you think that Chinese companies will make the most headway and actually could teach something to companies outside of China? I think about the personalization. I think about maybe short video, where I think a lot of the Chinese companies have made huge advances. What are some of the other things that, if you were describing the Chinese AI environment to an outsider, would you be most proud of developments and think that there's most that China has to teach the world? Benny Food, would you like to maybe give it a try?
我觉得在中国发展人工智能
I think
一个比较大的优势是
China has a great advantage in developing artificial intelligence, and that is our enormous user base. And as a result of that, the application of all the technologies can potentially find a quick application, because we are going to receive a lot of user feedbacks. At the end of the day, whether you're talking about application of technologies or use of other technologies, at the end of the day, it's all about serving the need of the users. And what we need to understand the most is what users actually want. What do they actually need? Once we applied that information, then we can make adaptations to respond to their needs. And in this constantly technological iteration, we will be able to quickly create value to the users. And I think this is something that we can present proudly to the non-Chinese speakers. I mean, our quick ability is to adjust to the evolving need from the users.
Maybe from the other side, what are the things where you think that the Western internet world, the AI world, is doing things on the media side which have most to offer globally?
Well, I think whenever I come to this part of the world, I'm always struck by how successful the integration in terms of messaging applications are, in terms of providing other services. I mean, the WeChat product is an extraordinarily powerful thing, maybe not for international users, but when you can integrate all of your banking, your social media interaction, your messaging, other services. I mean, I think that's a very successful model, and from my reading of it, and that's something the West and even the giants of Facebook and Google, etc., are probably learning from the other way around. In terms of what does the West have to offer, I think with the idea of what does the user want, it's interesting in terms of there are dangers in creating these echo boxes of certain views being recycled and contained, and people living within. Facebook in particular has got into enormous trouble for creating those echo boxes. So I think commercial news broadcasters would be very concerned not to repeat that. But I think there is a balance about being close to the consumer and creating preferences. I'm actually a big tennis fan, and in a couple of my news applications that I use very regularly, it spits out to me lots of stuff about tennis that's not threatening democracy. It's just actually a good user experience for me. So I think if you can create a balance where user preferences are key, you're engaging with the application in the right way, it's giving you a good experience, it's opening doors to things that it might not otherwise, without creating the dangerous echo boxes of views just being recycled, then that's a good balance. And I think some of the best practitioners of the market are reaching that.
John, maybe you can comment when you're teaching the issue of digital. How do you deal with some of the issues that Adrian just raised, and also that the previous speaker raised about privacy? How do you balance privacy and personalization, artificial intelligence, and the need to actually have the more individual private experience?
Well, I'm not sure about privacy exactly, but one thing that I believe quite strongly is that what we need to do is think about video, which is a linear medium, essentially, as being something that can be actually brought into a more interactive experience and have other kinds of content built around it, such as, for example, information about other kinds of things brought in other media, social media, and so forth. And I think that there one can have a much more clearly personalized experience. So one's media can be actually contributed to by various other material which is possibly sourced from various parts of the internet, which can be then brought into your, as it were, stream and kind of curated along with it and edited for you. As a kind of supplement to the material that you happen to be watching at the time. And I think that artificial intelligence and such like techniques give us a lot of power for doing that kind of thing, because material can be found, recruited, perhaps adapted and so forth, and made very relevant to whatever particular topic the user might be interested in at that point. So obviously in that kind of process, there are all of these risks of echo boxes and various other kinds of things. On the other hand, there's potentially the opportunity to actually break out of those boxes by, in effect, injecting material which is from outside the box in ways which perhaps people don't immediately feel are adversely, kind of antagonistic to the particular position they hold. So I think that there's a lot of possibilities in that kind of direction in terms of media fusion and thinking about the various blends of technologies we can use to achieve that.
We talk about convergence, but one of the things that always strikes me is that it's the new companies like the ByteDances, like Tencent, that do more of the innovation, and the traditional companies like Reuters, where I originally came from, like even CGTN, CCTV, tend to be slower and more conservative in terms of taking risks. What do you think can be done to actually get the big traditional media companies to be even bolder and take bigger risks when it comes to technology?
I think overall, even though I have concerns about new technology, but I think for, like, television is based on technology, it's the product of technology. So we have experience from newspaper transformation to TV era, and now it's TV era to digital era. So we still need to embrace with an open mind. However, I think it has a higher requirements for professionals to have digital literacy or to have the set of skill in order to embrace. And I feel the double-edged swords of AI, definitely it can help in processing or free journalists from more labor-intensive work. So maybe we can do more sophisticated processing or thinking about how we want to cover the news. So still open-minded to embrace, but I think with cautious and measured step.
What do you think about that, Adrian? What would it take to get members of your association really to be much bolder and more radical?
I think you're right in saying there's a lot of inertia in the industry. I mean, what I see in many of the companies who I work with very closely are still organizations, although they've read all the right statistics, they've seen PowerPoints like we've seen today talking about the move to digital consumption, the move to mobile devices being the primary device through which people consume whatever content they want to consume. Their organizations are still very geared towards producing linear TV. Any morning meeting will be dominated by those guys and gals on the linear TV product. And I think there's now a disconnect between people having assimilated the big trends that are out there in the global market, and yet still finding it difficult to reorganize themselves, if you like, to this different way of consuming media, whether that's in the news or in the entertainment industry. So I think that is a big problem, and I think the guys like Tencent, where they have an advantage, is that they were starting without all of that 50-year legacy of TV infrastructure, and I think it's given them a jump start. And I think traditional TV companies should be mindful of leaving the luggage behind a bit quicker than they perhaps are.
So Yanpeng, maybe you can talk to that a little bit. When you're selling to more traditional companies, how do you get them excited about what you have? How do you get them to see new potential that maybe you and your engineers are very clear about, but it's harder to convince a more conservative company that it's really good for them?
其实这个问题呢，我觉得我们更应该探讨。
I think what we should talk more about is the media organization itself. Media, first of all, is a medium, and second, is a carrier of a content. Sure, I understand now the technology has been developing very quickly. We are moving from 2G to 3G and then 4G and soon 5G. We as a technology company believe 5G is going to create a very disruptive impact on media with the application of VR and AR. Probably with the introduction of 5G, we don't even need to be physically here to conduct this interview. That's going to create a lot of very good consumer experience. This is number one. Secondly, about the content, I think the advantage of news professionals is everybody's aspiration for quality news products, and I think that is unlikely going to change however technology evolves. As I said, we will soon enter into an area of 5G, which means we will be able to deliver content with 4K or even 8K. So the technology is progressing, but this pursuit of excellence for quality is always there. So I think finding a way to incorporate the technology with good content is the key going forward for media organization in the future. If a media professional really understand the role of technology in helping them create content and disseminate content, they will be rather open-minded about it and embrace it.
So maybe can you pick up on that? What are some of the
那接下去我们再来
talking about, say, artificial voice, and when you went to CCTV and you talked about doing the artificial voice in a documentary, was it hard to get them to agree, or were they very eager to agree?
我觉得这个问题呢，其实我比较同意我们这边。
I think I quite agree with the agent's opinion that we have a carrier and we have a medium. Medium is actually the technology we use to facilitate our work, to make our work easier. But we can use a very good benchmark to measure that. For the first line media friends, maybe they will think a certain part of it is quite boring, so they can make use of technology to liberate them from this part of work so they can get engaged with the fun part. I think the ultimate goal of technology is to service people. The critical part is to decide how to use the technology. For content creation, I think the most important part is that the value proposition of the content must be in line with the general pursuit of the society, and it has to be personal, emotional, and it can meet the requirements of the needs of the users for content. Thank you.
Adrian, do you think that media companies have the right people in the right jobs, or do you think that the media executive of the future has to be much more digitally literate and technologically capable than they are today?
They probably don't. I think that all good organizations are a product of their good people, and I think that, you know, another presentation I heard recently was looking at what happened in the print industry, and if you like, that impact of disruption happened 10, 15 years before it's happened to the broadcast industry. And this commentator was saying how this organization needed to change half of the people in their organization in order to reorientate towards a different kind of future. And part of that is definitely cost, because people are expensive, and any media business knows that unless you're, you know, on the content production side like Netflix, most TV news businesses, 70% of the costs are revolving around people. So that's why these discussions about AI and automation are incredibly important as well. So no, I think some of the right people are there and some of the wrong people are there, and people who can see the opportunities of the products that you're talking about to create different kinds of experiences using, you know, clever facial recognition tools, using different applications. I think actually in general, you know, as I was suggesting before, there's not enough emphasis on the mobile experience, you know, for news companies in particular. I think that could be prioritized more, and inevitably that means pulling in people who are more comfortable with using and creating mobile experiences, whether it's augmented reality applications or looking into immersive news or knowing how to create that content. So oftentimes those skills might not be in traditional news companies, so yeah, you have to go and find it from other companies.
John, what do you do within the academic world to try to create the right new journalists of the future? Are you doing enough to combine technology and traditional journalism training?
That's a very good question. I think that really the important skills, in some sense, of journalism probably remain the same. It's really important to find facts, find stories, pull them together, understand what kinds of things people want. But on the other hand, I think that the ways in which those stories are brought to people and made available to people, and the ways in which people are able to use those stories perhaps to develop their own conversations and various other kinds of activities around them are changing faster than any of us can keep up with. So I think that in terms of education, whatever we give our students around the technology area is something that in 5 years' time, you know, will have changed almost out of recognition, probably certainly in 10 years' time. And so, you know, what we have to give them more than anything else is the skills to work with technology which is rapidly changing, to adapt, to be able to take that on board and work with it. But around that, I think the other kind of crucial things that we really have to have in mind are things like ethics, things like understanding the important, you know, ground base of what journalism is all about, which is the sort of thing that can be seen shifting underneath people in ways that, you know, it's as if there's an earthquake going on. People have to somehow retain their balance, and that's difficult, but I think that's the sort of thing that we have to find ways of coping with.
Man within CGTN, what do you look for when you hire today, and how are you training the people that you already have?
I think the most difficult part, or the most important part, is still the talents that can bridge the gap between content and technology. Or what I mean is to use the right technology or choose the right technology to produce the content you want to deliver to your audience. For example, the VRs, the 360-degree, these are all new technology that really change the static kind of sender-receiver one-way flow, then provide kind of immersive kind of experience, and that change the narrative or change the way of storytelling. But then, first of all, I think all the journalists needs to have understanding of new technology or willing to learn. Right now, I think depends on institutions to provide those talents. Can be difficult. I think they have created a lot of like digital kind of department to study new media. But right now, it's more like process when we recruit people, if they have digital experience or has worked, have certain understanding of internet, have the social media, or are willing to learn technology, that would be highly valued. It does have a higher requirements these days, I feel.
And can media companies pay enough to get the right people, or will the technologically literate, cutting-edge people all go off to work in fintech and banks and brokerages?
That's also the challenging part. If we compete with Tencent, I don't think the salary rate will be competitive. Yeah. So it does needs also people have the idea of, you know, trying to pursue journalism. They love journalism, and that's still the core, because what we're doing is not new technology. It's how new technology in kind of facilitate journalists to do our work better and to better engage with our users.
So you're still looking for the people who have journalism in their heart and then maybe
have
technology
a digital
in their mind.
Yeah, or tech savvy. So.
Well, let's have more of an immersive experience today and go to the audience to see if there are questions for our great panel. There's one over there. Can we get a mic to the person in the third row there? Put your hand up again so they can see you. Over there on the far side. Run. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, great discussion. In the first Jurassic Park movie, Jeff Goldblum's character is shown the process which the scientists used to reanimate dinosaurs and all that. And the quote, I'm probably going to misquote it, but it was something along the lines of, "You guys spent so much time thinking about if we can do it, but not enough, should we be doing it?" And I was struck by that reference when, was it Benny was talking about the voice recognition, or recreating celebrity voices to get them to say whatever they like. I'm wondering if, firstly, Benny can talk about the ethical considerations he and his team used, and if also the other panelists could sort of talk about whether they think that we've opened a Pandora's box here and not sort of thinking about the long-term ethical considerations that come with such technology?
That's a great question. Benny, would you like to talk about why did you do that in the first place? Why recreate a celebrity voice? Is it the right thing to do? How do you keep from using that celebrity's voice to say something that they actually wouldn't want to say?
就像我刚才举的这个例子
Just like I mentioned in the example, it's Innovation China documentary. We used the voice of a famous celebrity here in China. Of course, we get the consent in advance. The application of the technology is for the purpose of serving people, to make us more efficient, more effective. The technology itself can never do the job. AI can be used as an aid to do the work for us, but we have to get the license or consent of relevant people. It's people machine working together for efficiency. Before, it would require a lot of time to finish the same amount of work. Now we can finish it in a short period of time because of the assistance of machine.
What do other people think are
其他人是怎么看的呢？伦理方面，是否也和技术一样发展的足够快？
People who watch The Crown, I can imagine Claire Foy, who played the Queen, quite happily. I could set my GPS and listen to her guiding me around, you know, how to get to Manchester or whatever. That would be fine. I don't think there's too many ethical considerations about that. But to have her commentating on the royal wedding or something might be inappropriate. So I think, I guess that comes down to that crossover of what's the use case, you know. I think it's a fun application, and we should be able to, but I'm sure the line will be crossed. We should be able to delineate which is appropriate and which is inappropriate.
Within a company like Tencent, do you have discussions about ethics, about what should you do, what should you not do, what things that you just don't want to get involved in?
其实在这个整个 AI 的这个应用上
In AI application, we are being very cautious. We talk about facial recognition. This technology is also adopted by Tencent. Last year, we applied facial recognition in a project which won us a huge award internationally. Such facial recognition technology is used to find missing children. Maybe 10 years ago, the child went missing. After 10 years, the appearance of the child changed a lot, but some fundamental features will remain the same. So we use the facial recognition technology to help find missing children. We have recovered more than 130-something children who went missing 10 years ago. This is an AI application. We have to find the right project to apply AI. There is a Swift application. For example, we all have an iPhone, and facial recognition can be used for face unlock. This is also AI. This is also facial recognition, and we try to benchmark our technology against international standards, and we try to find which applications are indeed suitable for the adoption of such technology. We are trying to do more on this front.
John, you wanted to say something on this?
Well, I think the lesson of history, so to speak, is that the biggest risks don't come from major organizations which have, by and large, generally quite good ethical controls built into them, but from sort of pirate operators of one sort or another. And I think that the problems with things like fake news are that it's, I think, sooner than probably we imagine, going to be quite possible to synthesize very believable footage of virtually anything you can imagine, really. and that has all sorts of problems. And the people that want to use that kind of capability for various kinds of ends that we'd rather they didn't are not likely to be the sort of people sitting on this platform. So I think how we actually combat that problem is an increasingly pressing issue, and I don't really have any answers, but I think that is certainly something which is going to be more and more problematic.
Great. Other questions? Yes.
Hello. I come from Cambodian STV. I have a question to ask Keda Xunfei. Yeah, we always talk about the international media cooperation. Actually, the biggest problem is the language. It's hard for us to understand each other because of language. So now we talk about this. So how about Keda Xunfei to work in AI translator? And how about the AI translator will help the media cooperation, especially international media cooperation? And thank you.
Since we're talking about the translation, first of all, I would like to thank the simultaneous translators for today, because my English is not really very good. It is almost impossible for me to speak English in occasions like this. In fact, when it comes to machine translation, we at Hi-Fi Tech has done a lot. The hope is for machine translation to facilitate communication in a multilingual environment, at least to provide assistance to simultaneous interpreters. And now when it comes to machine translation, what we can achieve is to get the general picture, rough message across, especially for very simple scenario of application like a daily conversation, but it is almost impossible for us to provide a simultaneous interpretation for a conference like today. But our hope is to continue this work so that we'll be able to provide assistance to media reporters or simultaneous translators. Now we are working in collaboration with Shanghai Foreign Studies University. We have collaboratively built a lab. So when students are being trained to become a simultaneous interpreter, we also do our machine translation. We compare the outcome of a human versus machine. This is just a guidance for them.
Man, I'm going to give you the last word. In 3 years, which is a long time in technology and also a long time in journalism, what's the one biggest hope you have the way technology will change your job?
I think CGTN is working arduously, trying to integrate with the new technology. I hope new technology will empower us journalists to do our job better to serve the great audience and the users.
Great. Thank you very much to a really excellent panel. Thank you to the audience.